Okay, top of the morning to you, folks. Michael here. Grandkids call me Rue. Welcome to Good News Rue. Today we're going to pull a little bit more from John 11 in the Gospel of John. Love it that you're joining me on this. Some of you watch this later. I love the comments. Thank you for letting me know, even in emails. Pulled out the old J.B. Phillips version this morning to just read this from this. Carol and I both carried this in high school, and in fact, my daughter took it to college. It looks like in 1993. This is Collins. There's another company that did this. This is the J.B. Phillips translation, I should say, paraphrase edition. It started in 1959. This particular edition came out in 72. And it was printed in England. And I was a part of an organization called Young Life, and this was sort of our go-to Bible for high school kids back then. We always carried it kind of tucked in our belt. We start telling the story, and you go, I didn't make this up. It comes from here. And so anyway, today I thought what I'd do is just read a little bit of this from John 11, and it'll be a fun way to get into this, and then I'll show you what I painted, and then we'll move on from there, okay? So here's the story. And I have my Bibles, why does it tie in without me even noticing it there? Wow, I love it when that happens. I'll tell you what it is. This I used in high school, okay? And Carol uses. I have another one over there. I have one. We try to buy some on eBay from time to time when we see them available. They came in a blue. They called it the leather and red leather, but it really wasn't leather. It was some sort of vinyl something. But this was the school edition. Don't you love that? For schools, it was a hardback book. And so here it is, J.B. Phillips. It says, and we went over this part last week. There was a man named Lazarus who had become very ill. He was in Bethany, right, which is a town that we know Jesus loved. He loved the people in Bethany more than he loved the town, but some think he really loved Bethany because he hung out there a lot. And it was only 2 miles away from Jerusalem. And it was way up the hill, Mount of Olives, and over to the east, kind of hard to get to a little bit. Well, every place was hard to get to in Israel at the time. So, but here's what happens here. Whoops, sorry, hit the wrong button. So, some people send word to Jesus, who is he is teaching a ways from there, and so they send him a note and they say to him, "Your friend Lazarus is dying. And Mary and Martha want you to come right now." And he goes, "Oh, okay." And so Jesus spoke these words, and he said, "Okay, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, and I'm going to go wake him up." And his disciple says, "Fallen asleep? You mean he'll be all right?" He said, "Well, actually, Jesus was spoken about his death, but they thought he was speaking about falling into natural sleep." And then this made Jesus tell them quietly, "Lazarus has died. And I'm glad I was not there." What kind of statement is that? Sometimes Jesus says stuff that you just go, what is he talking about? He died, and I'm glad I was not there. And you go like, whoa. You know what we hear in stories and movies and real life is that I just wish I'd have made it home before the person died, or I wish I'd known, and I just wasn't there when they died. And so Jesus is going like, yeah, it's my good friend Lazarus, and I'm glad I wasn't there when he died. And they're going like, what is wrong with you? I don't think they said, maybe they said it. I don't know. These were good friends. They hung out together. And he's going like, yeah, I just wish I wasn't there. And when I read stuff like this, even though this is a paraphrase translation, I love the fact that even in the Bible, that the other Bibles that are translated, we read, it says, I didn't need to be there. Lazarus has died, and I'm glad for your sakes, though, that, and I'm glad I was not there. And he adds to it, comma, for your sakes. And they're going like, what does this have to do with us? And he says, that you may learn to believe. So let's go to him. But they stayed an extra 4 days. And so Mary and Martha, they're pretty well wound up by now. And as a matter of fact, uh, Martha gives him a piece of her mind because she knows he's on his way, and she runs out to meet him a little ways when she hears he's coming. And she says, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died, which tells you how she felt about him in the first place. They knew. They didn't know everything about him, but they knew they'd never met anyone like him. Can I just say that one more time? They didn't know everything about him yet, but they knew a lot about him, and they didn't know everything about him, and they still couldn't figure out if he was the real Messiah or not, because that wasn't what they were expecting in Messiah. Remember, they'd been praying for this Messiah who's going to come in and put together a people, an army that was going to defeat Rome, and the Jews would have their land back, and everything would be good, and people would grow gardens and dance, and life would just be great. And guess what? Life is hard. Life is just hard. And so here's where it comes back into what we're talking about today. And so I want to just show you a little more in this right here, where he says, my brother would never have died. I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask him, and your brother will rise again, Jesus said. And she said, I know that. He'll rise again in the resurrection on the last day. See, she knew that. She believed in the afterlife. I still meet people today who go, well, if there is a life after this one, and I just take my glasses down like this sometimes, and I go, what? So you believe that you're just living your life for absolutely nothing. You just go to eat, to go to work, to go to eat, to go to work, to go to eat, to go to work, to go to eat, to go to work. Wow. I'm sorry for that. I'm sad for you. There has to be more purpose than that in life, or God wouldn't have created something so beautiful. He wouldn't have made us. He wouldn't have made sunsets. He wouldn't have made love. He wouldn't have made relationships. He wouldn't have created families. What a mess. No, he said, I love these people. This is why I did this. This goes back to the story in Genesis that we were made for a purpose. Adam and Eve take care of this place. And of course, then it all comes apart with the lie and the fall and the sin. But God says, I can redeem all of that. That's what God does. He redeems. And so he's waiting in this story to redeem some of his close followers and some of those religious leaders around him. Because when Jesus, now in this part of John is writing this story some quite 70 years later, and with all these notes, and he's putting it all together, and they passed it down. They're inking it out so that we have these words today. And here's what happens. Crazy, isn't it? When Jesus was on his way to somewhere, people started following now. One is that they had seen blind people healed, and they had seen lame people made to walk, and they had seen deaf people get their hearing back, and dumb people start to speak. And so they were going, whoa, he's, if nothing else, he's a miracle worker. We got to follow this guy. And so they had seen him heal people. They had also seen him argue with the scribes and Pharisees, people who kept law and who tried to keep order and who were all about rules and regulations, and they'd seen that a lot. So wherever he went, he was gathering a crowd. So sometimes he loved to go to Bethany just to hang out. So there he is. He's on his way now. It's 4 days afterwards, and Lazarus has died. And if you know anything about Jewish customs at all, you put the body in the ground before sundown. And so they had wrapped him up, and they had bound him tightly, and they had put him in a tomb that they had on the property. And they had closed the stone over it. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? See, everything in the Bible is a story. God created story. I love story. Have you ever heard me say that before? I love story. I love how story comes together. I'm a sappy guy for a story. I'll watch a Hallmark movie, for heaven's sakes, and I'll know exactly where it's going, but I watch it for different reasons than most people probably watch it. I watch it to see how the story interchanges, because I love writing stories and I love producing stories. Yesterday, I had the honor and the privilege to shoot two very, very important stories. One of those stories was about a man who has to have a kidney transplant, or he'll be leaving this continent, this earth. In the midst of his kidney, finding a person who matched him perfectly, he goes in for his last test to see how he's going to hold up in surgery, and they find that he needs a heart bypass. So they put him on dialysis and back and forth, and then what they do is they immediately do a triple bypass. What? Now he's healed from that, and he's going to get the kidney transplant. So I had the privilege yesterday of interviewing the man who's giving the kidney and the man who's getting the kidney. And so as I interviewed them and I saw what was happening, I saw the story unfolding that I hope I can just edit it well to tell it. So it's going to be a good story to tell. And one says, I wanted to be anonymous and I didn't want anybody to know who I was. The other one says, who, you're kidding. You're saving my life. I want everybody to know who you are, but it's not about me. It's about you. The other one said, no, it's not about me. It's about you. And they both finally said, listen to this. This makes me emotional. They both finally said, it's really about God. Boom. There's the story. This is not about Lazarus. It's not about Martha. It's about Jesus because Jesus is God. But it's not about the disciples, but they're learning. It's not about the people standing around. But here's what it's about. It's about God being God and us understanding who that is. That's what makes this chapter fantastic. If you're in the Trinity, you realize that Jesus and the Father are one and the Holy Spirit is coming. So this Trinity, but now he's on earth and he's walking around and he loves the little town of Bethany and he's there hanging out with his friends and they're going like, if you'd have been here today, he wouldn't have died. And Mary weeps. And here's the verse. If you ever want to memorize scripture, right? The shortest verse in scripture is John 11, verse 35 that says, Jesus wept, period. Boom. He cries. So I can remember this whole story just from those two lines, Jesus wept. And then what happens is he says, let's see what God has done here. So I'm going to hold you off on that one just for a second. But he says something to them that's very important. Here's what he says. She says, I know my brother will raise up on the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus says, hold on, listen to this. I myself am the resurrection and the life. The person who believes in me will live even though he dies. And anyone who is alive and believes in me will never die at all. And they're going like, wait a second. Lazarus just died. And he goes, no. That's just his life being over here on this earth. I'm talking about I've made eternity. So the people who believe in me, they just pass from one gate to the next. So sure, people are going to feel sad and people are going to miss you and life is going to change and life is going to go on. And that's not what this is about. This is about you living with me eternally. That's what salvation is about. That's what living and following Jesus is about. It's pretty remarkable. This is just a place where we build fences and have gardens and have neighbors and try to do the best we can do because we are here to serve and to take as many of those people with us as we can. That's why you live like you live. I hope you do. Crazy story, isn't it? All right, I got to show you a couple things here. So this was my Bible in high school. There it is right there. Boom. Well, one of them. And Carol and I both carried. This may have been hers. I don't know. I had one too. I had a red one. And so I want to show you something else that when I painted, this is the second time I painted through John. You shouldn't be surprised at that. There. And I try not to paint the same things because I just read it and see what strikes me a little differently. So what struck me the first time that I did John in March of 2020 was this. I am the resurrection and the life. There's an old song that goes, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will never die. I am the resurrection. And it was very 1967 upbeat Jesus music, rockin' hootenanny folk song. I learned that song and I used to play it at this Young Life Club. So I had my long hair and I'd stand up front and had some friends that would lead music with me and the kids would sit there. I was one of the kids too, but I just had this great privilege and blessing to help the guy who led it. And his name was Alec. He was a mentor to me. He never said, I'm your mentor. He just was a mentor to me. And so we would sit down and go through these stories just like I'm going through them now. He was that guy who came alongside me. Whew. Carol and I were friends. We worked in that Young Life Club, and she had she had macrame'd me a guitar strap. I'll show it to you sometime. She's just done our granddaughter one. Our 13-year-old granddaughter who's writing songs. And it had these wooden beads that hang down on it. And so when I'd get moving into song, they'd start going, shing, shing, shing. I finally had to cut them off because they made so much noise against the back of my guitar. But I'd be singing this song. And I, in the first version, drew this in my Bible to remind me of this. I have come to bring you the truth. I have come to bring you life. If you, yes, you, believe, and they would go, I do, then you shall live. 1970, Knoxville Young Life Club. I used to stand and sing this song. And so when I see this crude little pen sketch with a little bit of ink on it, it takes me immediately back to Jesus saying, stop worrying about death. I'm the resurrection and the life. When you find life in me, you have life. You not only have it abundantly, you have it forever. Wow, that is pretty powerful in the gospel. If only you had been here, Jesus. If only, Jesus, you had been here. My mother wouldn't have gotten cancer. If only you'd have been here, these cars could have not crashed. And we lost we have a dear friend in Florida who lost a 10-year-old grandson this week on a freak accident, a bicycle by himself, just riding like the wind with his helmet on and all the gear. And he takes a tumble and the handlebar pierces his lung. And you go, what? If only. We'll never explain that. Somewhere in your notes you should write this. If only. If only. And he says, Lord, where were you? If only. And he goes, if only. Come on. He's bigger than if only. So today, I read that story, and here's where I went. I went here. So here's my second copy of John. I'm the resurrection and the life. And anyone who believes in me, now it's on the second page. When she saw this, she called out to her sisters, the teacher's here and he's calling for you. And when Martha raised up, she runs out to meet him. And the Jews were quickly in the house consoling her. And let's see here. I want to go into this. I'll show you what I painted next week. Oh, and so they followed her out, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. And so when she saw Jesus weeping, what? When she saw Jesus, her weeping, when Jesus saw her weeping, I can do this in a minute, I promise, and the Jews had come with her, they were also weeping. He was moved, and he said, where have you laid him? And they said to him, come here. And he goes and he sees the tomb, and Jesus wept. So the Jews said, see how he loved Lazarus, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he have opened the eyes of the blind man? Could he not also kept this man from dying? Wow. If only he had come earlier. If only. And then there's a build-up for you to paint this next week. I'm going to leave this page. This is where Lazarus comes out of the tomb. That's what I'm going to paint right there. So what did I paint today? I saw this painting years ago, and I don't remember it all, but it's a picture of Jesus's face a little bit like this, and he's in this. He's got his cloak up over his head like this, the shawl, and so there's this face, and it's kind of covered in. I think I could probably do this with just some pencil, a layout pencil maybe, and just rub it in with my finger. Do you know what a punt is? I have a punt here in my cup. Let's see. One of these right here. This is just a shading punt. I don't know if you ever used one of these or not, but here's what it is. It's a shading punt. It works like this. If I do a little here, I can grab this. It's just wound up glued paper, really. And you get them in the art store, but look what it does. It's got a little point, and it's really good for picking up this um, um, color from the pencil, the graphite, and moving it. And so I could use that here by adding a little darkness to this page, just like this, and with some stones in here around the tomb. And maybe this is the tomb here. So Jesus is standing there next to the tomb. And also give me a little darkness in the background so I can take this in here and just spread that out. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, like that. So I might could put a little bit right in here on his face up and under there. That'd be a great place for it right there. And I'm going to try something here. I just need a little piece in here. It's pretty powerful when you think about, he knows he's God. He knows what he can do. And yet when he gets there, he also weeps. And he weeps with people. He's standing there with you. Yesterday, shooting this video of these men and this heart, or the kidney, I got emotional. I went, whoa, now I'm getting emotional. And my granddaughter's shooting with me, and she's running the second camera. And so at one point in time, I see her move the camera over, and she's capturing the man who's getting the kidney. And he's going like, this is for me. It was pretty powerful. And then we left that shoot, and we went to another shoot, and we were shooting a couple who couldn't have children, and they've been married for 2 years, and they knew that when they got married, and I knew adoption would be a part of their life. And that's so scriptural too, because we're adopted into God's family. And so the birth moms today want to see a video of the family that their children's going to. So they had no clue how to put this together. So I said, look, I'm coming to do it for you. And I didn't know the people, young couple we just met, and their story was awesome. And just how they believe that God's going to lead them to the right person and say, if you're the mom, we will care and cherish for this child, and it'll be our child. It'll always be your birth child, but it'll be our child, and we'll raise that child. And if not, we pray that you find the right place for your child. And so it's pretty powerful what happens sometimes when you get to do these stories. It's just remarkable. And how fun to have my granddaughter there to see those through the eyes of people telling stories. Anyway, I'm going to add a little bit of color to this because I just think I should. I'm going to put some shadow in around the face here. Maybe I don't need to. This is looking pretty good here. I'm just going to take a pencil. I don't do a lot of pencils in here. I just usually do pen, but I thought it might be fun to just do a little scene like this. So I just do a little sketch. And by the way, this doesn't have to be great work. You know why? Because I think sometimes it, especially on a journal like this, it takes away from what you're doing. I think if it's too perfect, I think what happens is people go, I can't do that. And there'd never be that risk with me doing drawings to teach you this on the show. But some people are so good at it that they go like, oh, I can never do that, so I'm not going to do it. And it hinders them from doing this. I want my grandkids to look at this and go, I think I can learn to draw a face like that. I want my friends who see this and who ask me about my Bible journals to say, oh, I could never do that. And I go, never's a long time. And so you see where I want to go with this. But this, to me, is the drawing that I believe that I'll put in there. And I think what I'm going to do now is just create a little bit of an eraser stripe right here. Watch this. Let's see if this will work. I'm going to try it right here on this piece of thing. See if this will work here. Smooth this out just a smidge. And I think what I'm going to do is just drag a little bit of an eraser down right through there like that. Yeah. I think I'm just going to do a tear right here. And then I'm just going to grab a little bit of, what am I going to use for that? Wow, it'd be great if I had a little tiny little brush here. Let's see what this is. Here's a little tiny brush. And just go in and get a little bit of blue gray and just drop it in right here, just like this. So, however you decide to do yours, maybe just a touch of touch of that right there. And maybe just a little bit more of that right there. Probably should use this some more, but I think if you look close enough, you can probably see that in the drawing. And then I might do a reference here, and I think it's on the next page, which is okay, because I'm going to do a little arrow here, and I'm going to go 11:35. I'm just going to put he wept. And then I'm going to give myself a note, if only. And then I'm going to give myself a quotations like this, or in brackets, parentheses, and say, never. I really want to get out of the habit of saying, if only God had done something, if only God had showed up, if only, wait a minute, he's God, he's everywhere. He can do anything he wants anytime. If only, never. Don't say that. I can't say that. You can say what you want, but I can't say that. So there's my story right there, and there's a little bit of the sketch that I'm going to do, and I think I'm going to leave it just like this. I think I am. I don't think I'm. There's a wish to go back and throw a little brown in here, maybe in some of this mountain, but I don't know if I'll do it yet. I might eventually, but kind of like it just like it is. I like the furrows in the brow. I like the eyes. I like this little streak going down the face here. And if somebody says to me, Jesus wept, what does my mind do? It immediately goes to John 11, verse 35, and it takes me to the story of Lazarus, which was he was in control the whole time. If only, no. Because what's coming up next week, and if you paint it, I want you to paint Lazarus coming out of the tomb, maybe. And that's what I painted, but you can paint anything you want. Maybe you paint two men hugging. Read the rest of the story this week and just get into it. Don't paint until you digest the story a little bit. You can do it if you want to. It'd be great if you just thought through it all and thought, what hit your heart? For me today, this hit my heart. I mean, you saw, I sit down here 20 minutes before the show came on with my cup of tea, and I read it again. I read it last night. I read it again, and I thought, no, this is where I want to go. And it wasn't until just a few minutes ago that I wrote, if only. If only, she says, if only you had been here. He stayed later. Why? Because it's God's will to do things in his timing and on his time frame. Boy, when we learn that, we're going to learn something. We're going to grow. Hey, thanks for being a part of Good News Rue. If you haven't told people about it, tell them about it. Tell your neighbors. Show them what you're drawing. Do not be bashful about your drawings, okay? Don't. Just say, this is a tool to remind me of what's in. If you see blank pages, it's because sometimes I'll just skip over here in this Bible. I forget where I am some weeks. So, all right. Blessings to you. I'm out of here. I've got a Patreon class to do this morning in about 9 minutes from now, 8 minutes from now. And so, but I love this Good News Rue with you guys that show up. Pass the word, Good News Rue. You know, you can do hashtag Good News Rue if you want to share it with somebody. And it goes right to boing, the YouTube page. I know I could say that. Blessings to you. I'm Michael. I'm out of here.